Welcome. I'm Robert Porter Lynch. For decades, I've been designing a collaborative systems architecture aimed at unlocking human potential and team performance, enabling people to work together across organizational divides. The years of dedication have evolved a system of collaborative excellence that underpins strategic relationships in virtually every imaginable industry. What's important for engineers? Well, ever since the ancients, those in Egypt, Greece, and Rome, engineers have been required to be masters of science and technology. Of course, this will continue into the future. So what's changed for engineers? And why is what we're presenting today so important? In today's high-speed and rapidly changing world, engineers are tasked with having to adapt, learning two new fundamentals. The first is systems thinking, seeing their world, their job, and the work around them very holistically and as an interconnected whole. Secondly is collaboration. How do you get people to work together in many fields interdisciplinarily to create more with less and faster? Let's take a look at some advice offered by the National Academy of Sciences in their book, Educating the Engineer of 2020. They present a very compelling rationale for re-educating engineers for the 21st century. The first is how engineers shape the future. In the past, changes in the engineering profession and engineering education have followed changes in technology and society. That's followed changes, not preceded the changes. In today's landscape, which is continually changing, engineering must adapt to remain relevant. Most importantly, the engineering profession must shape its own future. So the vision for engineers in the future focuses around how imperative it is that engineers become lifelong learners, not only because technology will change, but also because the career trajectories of engineers will take on many more directions. Engineering of the future also must deal with new ways of looking at leadership and interdisciplinary solutions. How can the profession best be educated to ensure that the core advances in technology are matched with similar advances in organizational leadership, innovation, and cross-functional integration, so they can leverage all of them to ensure effective interdisciplinary engineering teams? And how can they best be assembled through other disciplines, such as business psychology and the social sciences? Critical to all of this is a systems perspective. Rapid technological advances have spawned new microdisciplines within engineering, increasingly requiring a systems perspective that looks to achieve synergy and harmony among diverse components of a much larger scheme. Systems engineering is based on the core principle that structured socio-technical methodologies can be used to integrate diverse components and technologies. This requires new ways of doing engineering. The 21st century engineer is going to have to manage high levels of complexity. These challenges will continue to grow in importance as systems engineering becomes more pervasive. Engineers must know how and when to incorporate socio-technical elements into a comprehensive systems analysis. We might add that with increased complexity comes the requirement of more effective collaboration and trust. Otherwise, complexity cycles into a perpetual spiral of conflict and chaos. Working in teams is going to be equally important because of the increasing complexity and scale of systems-based engineering problems. There's a growing need to pursue collaborations with multidisciplinary teams of experts across multiple fields. Essential attributes of these teams include excellence in communication, understanding the complexities associated with global markets and social-cultural contexts, and flexibility, receptiveness to change itself, and mutual respect for others. Now, this is very important because this creates the context for collaborative systems excellence. Over the last 30 years, we've been working on ways to design, discover, develop, and field test a fully integrated system that can elegantly connect 6 levels of collaborative architectures that typically produce about a 25% competitive advantage. And we'll show you how that competitive advantage actually is created a little bit later. The first part of this system though, is to understand human behavior. Based on Paul Lawrence's work at Harvard Business School, and I worked with Paul closely. He was my mentor, friend, and co-author in the latter part of his life. From that human framework of the 4 drives of human behavior, to acquire, bond, create, and defend, we were then able to evolve a very, very elegant trust framework that can be learned by virtually anyone. It works across boundaries. It works in Eastern Europe. It works in Latin America. It works all across the United States and in Canada. And we've tested it in all of those places. The second aspect of this is what we call culture. Most engineers don't really like to deal with the issue of culture, but when you come to recognize that a culture without trust is barren and even corrupt, a culture that works really well will produce absolutely phenomenal high impact and performance teams. Having the right trust and culture then sets the stage and foundation for the next element, which is collaborative innovation architecture. Collaborative innovation is essential because it actually uses the frameworks of diversity to escalate and elevate and accelerate the whole constructs of innovation, which move things faster and better. What collaboration and innovation culture does is actually create a whole new framework for economics. And we found an economic system that's been buried for centuries, that the economists don't really understand and look at, but we can explain very, very quickly how to produce phenomenal value, typically in the 25% competitive advantage range. From that, we can then show senior executives why this system really works, because we've got their attention when it starts to get a 25% competitive advantage. That creates the foundation and understanding then for our leadership system, which really works on 4 alignments: strategic alignment, cultural alignment, operational alignment, and dynamic realignment in time. This enables us to start to reframe complex systems, because complexity now has an alignment architecture and an innovation architecture, and an architecture of trust and culture can then work phenomenally to produce complex projects in sometimes half the time, coming in well under budget. The integration of these architectures enables engineers to move quickly from one level to the next. It's easy to learn, it's easy to remember, it's elegant to use, it's field tested to produce measurable results with minimal resources, and all 6 of them are seamlessly interwoven into the fabric of the architecture. Now, the 6 core architectures are designed in a particular way and presented from the micro, that's the individual approach, all the way to the macro, that's the large systems approach. This begins first, as we've said, with the brain functions. This is how the individual looks at the world, and then how do we create trust so we can create the collaborative foundation for relationships that can then be used as the basis of the much larger complex system. The second, around culture, enables us to work in high-performance teams, and using those teams as the foundation of innovation architecture that enables dynamic adaptation so we can work across and within organization structures. That moves to the economic structure where we see how to create value. And if you can't create value, you might as well kiss this all goodbye, because it's not going to be appreciated by anybody. That moves to a much larger inter-organizational systems alignment perspective, using our leadership structures to create fast time value networks. These are alliances, these are collaborative ecosystems. You might find other uses for fast time value networks in systems very much like highly complex, large projects. Our educational system produces mindsets, strategies, solution sets, skill sets, and tool sets that impact everything from the individual to the large system perspective. These are based on hundreds of field-tested and scalable best practices that produce excellence. We know this stuff works, otherwise we wouldn't be showing it to you. How can you apply these things? Because applying the 6 architectures is very, very important. And we've tested these in the field, and we found that it's like a universal passport. We found that our approach works in senior executive leadership, negotiations, strategic alliances, turnaround, supply chain management, how to diagnose problems in organizations, complex project management, high-performance teams. We've seen people escalate their strategic execution dramatically, transform organizations, and actually change the way people function to make them really much happier in much of what they do. That from an organizational impact, these 6 integrated collaborative architectures produce about a 25% competitive advantage. This shows up in increased communications, better trust and teamwork, much greater agility and speed. Employees are retained because they actually love their jobs. We have better problem solving and innovation, increased value creation, increased performance, increased productivity, and profitability, something your Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer really appreciate. When we put this 21st century engineer into this perspective and collaborative systems excellence, we've decided to create 5 different versions of this. The first version is available to senior business executives, also to engineering professionals. Another version is for supply chain professionals, public sector leaders, and those involved in acquisitions and alliances. Each version uses the same common core architectures with cases and contexts customized to each profession. Thus, when used inside a company or an alliance or an ecosystem, each profession can still talk to each other. They will have learned the approach and the architectures from their own point of view. To conclude, unlike other systems which cobble together frameworks from a multitude of authority, our approach is totally coherent, seamless, leaving the learner with a totally logical and rational system that's energized, fluid, elegant, and very simple. Compare this to many courses where a whole series of frameworks are cobbled together, glued together, they're fragmented. What one authority says doesn't dovetail in with what the next authority says, and very often these haven't been field tested. We thank you. We look forward to. We have a 2-day program. In the first day, we cover human behavior and trust, the power of collaborative excellence and culture, collaborative innovation, and then moving to the second day, we cover the economics, the leadership, and how to manage complexity. We can also do this in a 1-day overview program or in 1-day in-depth workshops covering each one of these topic areas in great detail. You people have enjoyed what we've done over the years. Here are just a few sample commentaries, one by Paul Lawrence and another by Paul Stoltz. If you want to see more testimonials, just click the little link in the bottom right-hand corner. And we look forward to working with you, your teams, and customizing some of these if necessary. Just give us a call or contact us at the Leadership Institute. Thank you.
We'd like to thank you for joining us for this Trust Talk. Please stay tuned for more Trust Talks featuring experts in trust building, collaborative leadership, innovation, and collaborative capitalism. The Institute is dedicated to bringing you the best insights, practices, and programs that help build your organization's ability to perform at world-class levels. Here are a few programs the Institute provides. We look forward to you joining us for our next Trust Talk.